All right, what is going on? Welcome to this video. Today we're going to be going over a very interesting topic. So a lot of people in my coaching calls or even on the teams I'm running talk about how to progress to sales managers. But then when we look at their actual performance, they are not acting like the manager of the role that they're in currently. For you to be a truly good sales manager, you have to be good at managing your role as a closer. Right? So we're going to dive deep into how to take principles that I have as a sales manager, apply them to your own role so that they will become transferable skills for when you do decide and are actually ready to progress into the sales management role. As a closer, you are literally the CEO of your own role. You're the one who chooses how many calls you take. You're the one who decides, am I going to follow up with these people or not? Am I going to be organized with it? How am I going to be organized with it? What are the things that I can do to ensure that I have stability within my performance and I don't enter ruts? All of these things, if you don't have those, progressing to a sales manager is just a cop-out because you're looking for maybe the easier thing or the thing that might pay you higher. But actually, half the time, this is why I manage multiple teams, a good closer will make more than a sales manager that's on a singular offer anyway. So if you just get good at closing and actually good at managing yourself, you will become an amazing closer, make a fuck ton of money, and then any offer would dream of having you as a manager rather than you just basically trying your luck to land a role, but you're actually not even that qualified. And as a result, you'll just become the next average person that's become a sales manager. Let's dive on into the training. All right, so we're into the iPad. As you can see, I've changed it up a little bit. We have a nice yellow lined piece of paper. So it's a little bit more aesthetic for anyone that was complaining on the previous notes ones, okay? So my goal is basically to equip you with the mindset, the tools, different processes, tracking, that sort of stuff, so that you can self-manage your own performance and self-diagnose as well before your revenue basically dips, which obviously for you as a closer means less cash in the bank, okay? So let's dive on in, because the biggest thing here is if you need basically a sales manager, let's say I was managing you, if you need me to tell you, hey, your performance has dipped, you've already lost so much money, okay? Because I'm not gonna see from one or two calls, this person's about to enter a bad stage. I can maybe pre-plan for it a little bit, but you're the person that has that level of self-awareness and you should be able to calibrate and fix that before it becomes obvious to someone else, okay? And that is really how you become the CEO of your own role, which is the most important thing. You will never have the developed character traits of a owner, of an entrepreneur, as a manager, any of these things, unless you develop these things within your own current role right now, okay? So your number one goal should constantly be around protecting performance. Because if you're the kind of rep that has an insane week and then that insane week just starts to kind of dip, and most of the time it's a lag. So what you'll find is you're cruising high, and then because you're cruising high, you actually stop doing the fundamentals that even got you to this position in the first fucking place. So then what happens? You start to drop, but it won't be immediate. It will actually be a lagging effect. So things will be fine. You know, you're still going to reap some of the rewards of your hard work that you've done. But then 1 week later, 2 weeks later, a month later, you'll then have a bad month. And then you'll almost definitely start to blame other shit, because a lot of the time people get into this position and then they start to get an ego a little bit. Oh, I'm the shit, I was the top performer, I'm the best. And then before you know it, they're blaming, oh my God, the leads are bad, the marketing's bad right now, this closer's getting better leads than me, which is why he's beating me this month. No, actually, it was a lagging effect because you stopped focusing on the things that got you to this position in the first place. So then someone else who was just doing the fundamentals has overtaken you, but it took some time for that to calibrate, okay? So if I think of one of the things that Iman used to talk about when he was kind of doing Agency Navigator, which has really stuck with me. Hygiene standard. What is your hygiene standard that you are not willing to dip below? Because this, again, if you are thinking as a founder, as an owner, as a CEO, okay, you should have hygiene standards across the board. How many calls are you taking per day, per week? What is your close rate? What is your show rate? What is your follow-up process? How are you organizing that? How are you going through a to-do list? How are you structuring your day? What does the schedule look like? Okay, these should all be things that you have a hygiene standard within, because otherwise you will be like this in terms of your performance. But when we set that hygiene standard, we set a baseline that we will then never dip below. And this is the type of person, again, that needs to have these intrinsic qualities to be a good manager, which is why it's so important for you to develop it now, okay? Because the biggest thing that will separate someone who's actually good at sales and someone who is basically average is, let's call them like an amateur or like a rookie sales rep. They'll try and win by motivation. Whereas a true, let's say, CEO, they will actually engineer stability. Okay? Because this will come and go, right? And this is the kind of age-old, thing about like discipline versus motivation, okay? But you should be able, through your hygiene standards, to engineer stability so you know that you are never going to have these months or weeks which will dip. And the biggest thing that we often don't have the introspection to realize is having an entire week of being in a rut. It definitely happens, and I've seen it happen, but it's a little less common. But if you are having, let's say, 1 day a week, that isn't that noticeable across the grand scheme of things. But then that becomes 4 days in a month, right? And then you have to factor in, okay, how much am I typically earning in terms of commission per day? Let's say it's $500, right? So it's $500 of lost opportunity cost on there. We then times that by 4. If you then times that number by 12, that's across the entire year. And you start to realize how much leakage there is from that. Now, to be honest, this is actually a slightly above average performer. Most people, it's kind of 2 or even 3 days where they go into a rut or they have some bad days. So then again, that constituted across an entire month, constituted across an entire year is huge. It's actually massive, but we don't think like that. And that's so much opportunity cost, which then as a result, we start to think, why am I not progressing as fast as I would want? Like 3 years later, you're still not really where you'd want to be. It's because of this shit, okay? So how can we actually make this happen, okay? So defined KPIs, right? This is your quantitative, right? Quantitative, this is a hard word to spell. And then you have kind of your behaviors, which is more qualitative, okay? So quantity and then quality. I'm just gonna write quality here, okay? And then we have our habits, more around like the reporting side, because if we want to be good at sales, we have to be able to be good at doing like a self-discovery and basically bringing awareness to where we're at with things, okay? So this is your EODs, this is your Slack, this is your projections, this is one-to-ones, all of these types of things. Number 1 is around performance, right? Performance drop-off, performance deviation, whatever you'd want to call it. So the first section is if there is anything more than a 10% fluctuation in anything around like show rate, close rate, all of these metrics, that is basically your North Star towards, if my show rate is better, I'll make more money. If my close rate is better, I'll make more money, okay? So if there's more than a 10% fluctuation in there, we need to be addressing why, okay? Because as a owner, as a CEO, as a manager, you should be taking full ownership and accountability to your own role. It's very easy to say, oh my God, the show rate was so bad this week, the marketing shit, the sales manager shit. But what were you doing to actively improve that? Were you going out and pre-confirming the calls? Were you getting creative with it? Were you sending them a WhatsApp voice message to actually personally touch base with them? Or were you calling them up? Or were you just kind of, looking at your calendar, sat there with your thumb up your ass, then they no-show on the day, then you just go and jerk off, then you come back an hour later for the next call, and then the same thing happens, and then you spend, an hour on the toilet taking a big shit whilst watching Instagram reels, right? It's like, again, it's your fault, okay? So this is the biggest thing here around the 10% fluctuation on any type of metrics like this, okay? The next thing that we would want to dive into is around your projections, your forecasts, your targets, okay? If we've missed those, 1 week is where we get red flags, and I'll go into some stuff in a minute. 2 weeks is where it's like, boom, something needs to be changed, something needs to be addressed, okay? I know when I'm running a team who is on the ball, when I say to them, okay, last week, where did you finish compared to what had you projected? The sales rep who goes, hold on 1 second, let me just check. I think I said, boom, they're not even taking this shit seriously, which as a result, they're not really working towards it. They don't even have a North Star that they're working towards. On the flip side, even if they do have an understanding of their numbers, and then I say, cool, why did you miss it last week? And what are you going to rectify this week to ensure that you hit it? The person who goes, yeah, the reason that I missed it was because this thing and this thing happened, and as a result, I'm going to start doing these things and these things. Boom, game plan, and I understand they have actually got some level, like I said, of self-discovery to say, cool, what can I focus on to try and improve those results? The person who goes, I'm not really too sure, to be honest. Or they try and blame other shit. They externalize, they rationalize, right? They blame game. Again, is not the right type of person, okay? So forecasts, if you're over 2 weeks, it's time to absolutely game plan. Now, again, a lot of these things, you're going to have a sales manager on your team take over on there. We shouldn't be getting to that point, and you should be the person that has your finger on the pulse to solve these things yourself. That's a truly self-sufficient team member, okay? Because you can have a manager who babysits you, but as a result, your performance, if it could be here, right, it's always going to be like here. Because there's always just someone that's got to be pushing you and trying to get you here, but it's never really happening. And the moment they kind of leave you to your own devices because they have other shit to kind of, deal with for, the next few days, you just start to drop down again. And it's just constant. And then the last one is regarding, and this is just for performance, is regarding your pipeline. Okay. So what is in the follow-up and what is actually moving? Right? How on top of this pipeline are you? Because that pipeline is literally your income, okay? And as much as I will teach on this, channel ways to close on one call, there will be people that you have to follow up with. That's the nature of the beast. That is just how it fucking is, okay? But how are you actually staying on top of that? Because genuinely, most reps that I kind of work with before having to really force and break this habit, they're just looking for new opportunity constantly. Oh, well, whatever, that call happened. And I'll ask him about it. Cool. What happened with John on this call? Oh, yeah, he just said he wanted to think about it. He didn't really seem too serious. Gotcha. What are the next steps with him? I just kind of told him, reconnect when it makes sense. It's like, nothing's been set there, so nothing will happen, right? Compared to the person who says, yeah, so he told me he wanted to think about it. I was objection handling him. I couldn't overcome it. But I said, cool. This is what we're going to do. You said you need 48 hours. We're scheduling a call 48 hours from now, right? Because I know a rep who is actually on top of things. Like they tried to go for the PIF, couldn't get it. Tried to go for the payment plan, couldn't get it. Tried to go for the deposit, couldn't get it. Still have a follow-up call scheduled. There has to be something for that because it's so black and white. They're either going to say fuck yes or fuck no. That's the only two options, right? In terms of a decision happening, it's either a yes or a no. So if you haven't gone through the process of kind of okay, well, do you see the value in what we have? Yes, I do. Okay, cool. So you do believe that what we went through on this call here today could get you the results that you were looking to get? Yes, I do. Gotcha. So what's the real concern? Well, I just need to do this. I need to do that. I need to do blah, 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 whatever, right? And if it's genuine logistics and genuine reasonings for it, obviously you're going to want to push for a deposit. Cool. Well, if you're fully in, what we would normally do is put a line in the sand and get some form of commitment so that on the back end, our team knows that you're in and we can start preparing things. Oh, well, I can't really do that. And because of this and all these things. Well, look, man, I know that typically when that happens, it often means there's more concerns. Otherwise, you would just put that down because if you're going to pay the full amount eventually, once the logistics are in place, you would be willing to put down a small amount. So again, what's really on your mind? I'd rather you just be straight up with me, right? And let's say we go down all of that route and it's still just kind of look, man, look, I'm not going to put a deposit down, but I'm telling you, I just need to do this, 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 and this. Gotcha. Okay, cool. Let's game plan that together. Let's reconnect on this day. Let's jump on. Let's kind of Miro board out a few ideas, set up an action plan, whatever, right? That's someone who I know they're on top of their shit. Whereas most people, I look through the tracker, I say, what's happening with this guy? They seem like a qualified lead. Yeah, they're lost to the fucking ether. They've gone. And there'll be some other closer that's actually organized, that is actually better at sales, that is way more of a basically taking accountability and management within their own role, and they will close the fucking deal, okay? So that is the other sign for me, is that pipeline actually progressing and changing and updating, or is it just there, you're not even paying attention to it, okay? So that's everything around performance. Next up is around behavior. Okay, so again, it's about having that introspection to look inside and start to notice where you're actually slipping in terms of conviction, energy, how you're showing up, communication that you're doing, all of these things. Okay, so on the meetings, are you present? Are you participating? Are you getting involved? right? Are you coaching others? All of these things are such important things to have, okay? Because every team that I've ever worked that is truly scaled, it's all basically stemmed from a really tight-knit team. They're all together, they're all looking out for each other, they're all pushing, it's very competitive, and that's such an important factor of it. So if you're not bringing that energy, I guarantee your results are a lot less as a byproduct of that, okay? The other thing is like when we start to look at our EODs, are they super, super vague, barely give any information? I'm chasing you for information, all of this shit, okay? Again, it's like this should be your way of checking, tracking, and staying up to date as to what happened on that day so you can even refer back to it where, as and where needed, okay? And then the last thing on behavior is like, are you blaming? Okay, we've said this numerous times on this channel, but the person who is doing this will not be able to overcome the prospect who also has those same objections. The person who's saying, well, the reason I haven't moved forward is because of this, because of the economy, because of whatever, right? It's all of this bullshit excuses. When I was like consulting a marketing agency, people were still blaming COVID. And this was last year that I was working with them. Like it's been like 4 fucking years, okay? So if you are the type of person that's saying, well, you know, the marketing took a real bad hit here, the leads are really bad, all of this stuff, it's you, and you are not able to look inside to resolve as and what happens, because sales is ebbs and flows, but there are still so many areas of it that are within your control, and that's what you need to be focusing on, okay? Because otherwise, you won't be able to overcome this because you haven't overcome it within your own life, okay? Then the third thing that we look towards is of the feedback loop. So what I mean with this is, again, you probably are getting feedback from a coach, from a manager, whatever it might be, right? And it's a case of like, if you're not applying the previous feedback that you got, right? Whether it was a call review, whatever it was, if you are having the same conversation, let's say 2 weeks later, right? If there is resistance towards submitting a call for review, or you don't want to come up on the meetings for all of these things, it is basically because you have stopped being coachable, and as a result, you are having bad weeks, okay? Because how can you fix those issues without that, okay? So again, a big part of this is the feedback loop. But if you are the kind of individual that's doing this yourself, you will skyrocket, okay? So are you reviewing your own calls? Because if you're doubling up reviewing your own calls alongside like a manager reviewing your calls, you will be the person that grows the fastest. And how are you actually reviewing your calls? Is it a case where you're just kind of like sat there, you know, barely even paying attention to it? Or, like I recommend to most people that I coach, are you going in, getting your call, right, writing out or typing up the transcript of what is being said, okay? And then with this, the way that I do it, you've got green, yellow, red. Now, what do these things mean? Green is like you highlight it in green and you're like, boom, right? Again, you can do this on a Google document, and I wouldn't just paste the Fathom transcripts of it. One, because they often are written out wrong and there's pieces missing. But secondly, the process of you taking what was said, typing it up, editing it where needed, color coding it, the whole thing is you diving very deep into like the intrinsic details of that call, okay? Which is the only way that we can really shift our own perspective of what was happening on that call and how we're going to do it moving forward. So green is like, you highlight it, you're like, that was a great question. Yellow is like, good question, worded badly. I over-explained it, I stuttered, whatever it might be, and then you just write out how you could have said that same question, but in a much more concise and powerful way. Red is like you asked a question that was totally irrelevant, and then you can write underneath it maybe 1 to 5 questions of what you could have said instead that would have opened a different pathway, okay? If you are doing that a couple of times a week, alongside maybe some of the external core reviews that you're getting, you will grow exponentially fast. The thing is, most people won't fucking do this. And I've said this so many times. That's the difference between someone that makes a shit ton of money and someone that just is very, 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 very stagnant, okay? And you have to choose, who do you want to be? Because maybe for some people, sales is the end goal. For most people, it often isn't. So it's like, if sales isn't the end goal, do you want to spend 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 years doing it because you weren't really growing that fast, so your income was fairly average? Or do you want to bang it the fuck out, go balls to the wall, and within 2 years you would make what this average person would have made within 4 and 5 years, and then you could move the fuck on to whatever else you want? How committed are you to mastery to actually make this thing happen, okay? So how can we reset ourselves, right? Let's say we're in this rut and we self-analyze this, okay? So how can we reset ourselves back to baseline? There are really 4 things that we want to look into, okay? So the first one is energy. The second one is clarity. The third one is necessity. And the fourth and final one is inspiration. Okay, so what do I actually mean by this? These are all so basic, but most people don't even do these properly. Okay, so energy is like, how good is your sleep right now? Are you moving every day? Are you hydrating, electrolytes, all of that stuff? Are you eating clean? Such basic stuff, but genuinely 90% of people are fucking that up, or at least fucking up some of them. Okay, so literally sleep, exercise, hydrating, eating clean. Now, this is basic advice, but actually look inside of yourself and say, am I genuinely doing those things? Probably not, right? For most people. Okay. Clarity is like, what is the goal? What is your next goal? What's the milestone? What are you working towards? And then the biggest thing is it specific? Right? Most people will say, yeah, I want to make 10K a month. Why? And then they'll come up with some bullshit. I want to retire my parents. Like, it's like, firstly, at 10K a month, you're not going to be able to do that. But even if you could, you don't even know what retire your parents means, okay? So when we get clarity, and we get clarity on the goal, and we make that goal specific, as in the next 12 months, I want to have XYZ goal. It's going to cost me XYZ amount. And for me to be able to do that, I would have to make this much per month specifically, which means I need to take fucking 10 calls a day, 6 days a week in order to facilitate that. And basically 100% guarantee that that happens based on my current close rate, current show rate, etc., etc. That's an extremely clear person. And as a result, they'd be a fantastic manager. They're going to be a fucking beast of a closer. And guess what? They're going to accomplish their goals as well, because it's not vague. The person that has this is very locked in towards what they're going to want and what they're going to get in their life, compared to, yeah, you know, I want to hit 10K a month. And then I think when I hit that, like, my life will change. You probably won't hit it. And when you do hit it, it won't change anything, because you didn't even fucking have any form of like tangible thing that was going to come from that. Okay. Now, necessity. Why? Why does this matter? Why does this matter? Who is depending on you? Okay, what gets left behind, right? What is the legacy? All of these things, right? So what you find is like, this is the specifics on how to make it happen. And this is the overarching theme, the overarching why, the driver, okay? And then inspiration is basically all around like, what can you use to inspire you? When did you last grow? Because there should be moments when you look back and you say, like, you're almost inspired by your own actions. It's like, fuck, if I actually think like 6 months ago I was here and now I'm here. And you can have that like gap that you have now basically filled. And we take that and we layer in this inspiration and we keep thinking, okay, where can I be another 6 months if I keep doing this? And we keep riding that momentum, okay? Because most people get momentum and then they stagnate, okay? So then we want to start looking for all of these things. What is the actual inspiration, okay? So all of these things together is how that we can reset. Okay, because the biggest thing is like, no one gets burnt out, right? You just don't have a purpose, or you don't have a purpose that is strong enough to actually facilitate and push within this, okay? Next section that we're going to say, okay, so that was number 4. Next section is number 5, okay? So the way that we can do this is, how can you like self-coach yourself into these things as well, right? So we've got these very tangible things that are required. This is like the foundation of it. There are also things that we can then do to also make this happen, okay? So first things is review your best calls, right? Something that's super, super powerful. Obviously, you want to be reviewing bad calls in terms of the transcript stuff like we broke down, but in terms of getting yourself back into a strong mentality and locking back in, review your best calls, listen back to it, feel the energy of it, feel how you are articulating in that moment. All of these things, like step back into that moment, okay? Because that would have been where your belief, your certainty, your driver, your why, everything was at its highest. So let's step back into that, right? Then we want to kind of anchor ourselves to like wins and all types of things like that, right? So if you're on a good offer, you should have client testimonials, you should have success stories, all of these types of things. And you should also hopefully have other team members that kind of look up to you or rely on you or whatever it might be, okay? And so you want to anchor towards the importance of some of these things. The other one is like, a lot of the time we need to reframe ourselves and shift certain things. So a lot of the time when we enter a rut, we're saying like, I'm doing bad right now, or am I good enough as a closer, or whatever it might be, compared to what is the actual importance of your role? Helping others. So we shift that belief. Who can I help today? How do I need to show up to ensure that I can help these people? Like we're in this moment before, like, oh, am I good enough? Like, it's actually selfish to feel that way. It's the whole woe is me, life is hard, etc., type dynamic, okay? Whereas when we shift the focus onto the prospect, what we can basically achieve for them, what we can bring them into, how we can help them step up to the highest version of themselves. You're then reframing that, which will allow you to kind of snap out of your own selfish thoughts, okay? And then the next one would be, again, also sort of a reframe thing around limiting beliefs. So it's kind of like catching yourself in the moment. So if someone says like, oh, this is such a tough week, right? No one's buying at the moment. My leads are shit or whatever, right? The rep who is blaming will never ever win. Okay, so again, it's like you've got to reframe that. So you've got to catch yourself in the moment. I do that all the time, right? Now, it kind of happens instantaneously. Before it would happen, I'd catch myself blaming others for something that happened, and I would have to think, fuck, no, that's not the way to be. That's not the way to show up as a leader. I got to catch myself and I got to shift it. How can I take ownership in this moment to actually ensure that I can just move past this and ensure that I'm getting the best results that I possibly can for this moment? And then again, we've already touched on this a little bit. We want to be doing the core reviews. That is the highest leverage thing you can do as a closer. Looking at your own game tape, right? Like a pro fucking athlete. Looking at it, understanding like, where am I dropping the ball? Am I unconvinced? Am I low energy? What specifically needs to be fixed for me to bring these things back up, okay? This is like, people are often in coaching calls and just stuff like that. They're looking for like, I don't know, magic strategies. Honestly, the highest leverage thing that you have is watching a real prospect on a real sales call that you took and looking at how you could have done that significantly better. That will be the biggest needle moving thing. But people half-ass the core reviews, so then they get half-ass results from it. So if we look at something like an EOD, you should just be asking yourself things like, where did I crush it today? Where was I coasting? Or where did I drop the ball? And what am I going to change tomorrow? That is day by day reflection on how you showed up and how you're going to get better, right? If we want to take the whole saying 1% better every day, that is your moment to do it. You've gone through your day, you're reflecting, you look at the things that were good, you look at the things that could have been improved. There is nothing that's bad, right? When we start to use that language, oh, I done bad here, you're like beating yourself up, okay? There's a term which is called, I would suggest to look into it, I believe it's spelled something like that, self-flagellation, okay? It's like the act of whipping yourself, right? It's like the act of like, hey, well, I've done shit, so I'm going to punish myself even more for it, right? So it's not like, oh, where did I do so bad, right? It's literally like, okay, where could I have improved? Where did I crush it, right? We always want to be focusing on some of the wins, some of the things we achieved, right? Then we want to focus on, okay, cool, what were the areas that I could have optimized and tweaked? And how am I going to be able to do that? What will I change tomorrow? So to kind of recap on this, right? A great rep, they're not like avoiding ruts as such. They just are able to very instantaneously notice the trends of what might amount into a rut, and they just recover very fast. They have one bad call and they're already looking towards, how can I reboot this? How can I reset? As opposed to most people have 5 bad calls in a row and then they realize, and then they're kind of just woe is me about it, and it's all externalization and blaming and all of that shit, and then they just get stuck in it, okay? So I want to remind you that you are literally the CEO of your own role, right? And what you earn is directly tied to how you run it in terms of how many calls you take, how well you show up, how sharp the calls are when you're in that moment, how organized you are with your follow-up. Everything there it's all you, okay? There's no one, and no one should either. Unfortunately, in this day and age, most of the time there will be someone that has to babysit you, but no one should be coming to clean your mess. You should be able to fucking identify this stuff and fix it yourself, okay? So you should be looking at, how can I lead myself? Because if you're this type of person, you're going to be the highest performer, which then means that you're going to be a top candidate to progress into a leadership or sales management role, but then you also have the qualities that are required for that role as well. Okay, so hopefully this made sense. I wanted to try and help through the lens a little bit of like a sales manager to actually get you to guide yourself and show up in those ways, okay? So appreciate you watching the video. We are coming up to around 700 subscribers or so, which is pretty fucking dope. I appreciate everyone. Happy Sunday is the day that I'm recording this and probably uploading it. So I will catch you all soon. Peace and love.